Hi loves, welcome to Olives. In this video I want to share with you how I made a high-waisted trouser. Keep on watching and learning with me. 2 yards of this material, a zip, a thread, a pant curve, a hip curve, and also a straight row. Let's get right into this tutorial. These are the measurements I'll be using: my waist, my hip, my thigh, my knee, the length of my trouser. So my hip is 41.5, right? My waist is 29. My thigh is 26 inches, and I'm going to use a knee of 18 inches. So we have 4 separate sections of a trouser. Okay, now in case you'll be needing a fitted trouser, then you will include your ankle or your bottom measurement. So I'll divide my hip by 4. I will divide my waist also by 4, but for the thigh and the knee, they will be divided by 2. And also, if you'll be using your bottom width measurement, then you divide that also by 2. Okay, I lost some part of the tutorial, so I'll try to explain as much as I can. Okay, so in case you'll be drafting on your material, then you draw a straight line starting like this, as you see, and I'll input quarter of my hip, and I'm going to add extra 2 inches to this. This is because it's a high-waisted trouser. Okay, this is my crotch depth, and above this crotch depth I'll go up by 2 inches to mark my hip line or my waist to hip. Okay, and I've marked my waist to hip, waist to crotch, waist to knee, the length of the trouser, right? And then also you add about 1.5 inches to the length of the trouser as allowance or as hemming allowance. Okay, pardon me again, I've lost that part of the tutorial. So on the hip, I'll measure quarter of my hip or my hip divided by 4, mark it here, and also mark it on the waistline. I'll put this into a straight line or short dashes, and I'll mark the same thing on the thigh. Okay, just to make a straight line to this point. Away from this border line, I'll go in by 1 inch and curve with my hip curve to the hip. Right from this new line, I'll mark quarter of my waist, and I'll add extra 1 inch because I want to have a pleat on the trouser. Okay, so I'll mark this like this, and I'm going to connect it to my hip with a curve. You can also use a straight line. Now right on my crotch depth, I will be dividing my thigh by 2. My thigh is 26, divided by 2 is 13 inches. So from my border line again, I'll mark 13 inches this way. Now I'm going to curve. You can also use a free hand if you don't have curves. Okay, and from here, from the intercept of the line I have, I'm going to mark out 1 inch and just curve it together to the hip line like this. Okay, so I'm going to divide whatever I have here, that's the thigh, into 2, and I'll mark this on the waist, on the knee, and also at the bottom of the trouser. And this will serve as my grain line, mostly also known as the crease line, if you be ironing to have a crease line. Okay, and on this same line I will pleat. Okay, to prevent any gapings or small lines on the front crotch, I'll go down by 1 inch, right, and connect this to the waist as shown. Now I won't cut this out because I will use it to cut the back, right? And on the knee, I'm going to divide my knee by 2 and divide whatever result I have into 2 and mark them on both sides of my green line or my red line. Okay, and I want my knee and my bottom, as in my hem, to be the same, so I use the same 18 inches for the bottom of my trouser. And I'm going to use this pant curve to also curve from the knee to the crotch, and also turn it this way. I'm going to manipulate it and curve it nicely to meet the crotch chest as shown. Alright, so that is it for the front, as simple as that. I'll move on to cut out and place it on a different paper, about 4 inches more than the actual size of paper I used just like you see. This is even more than what I just said. So but you want to make sure that you have enough room to have your extensions on the back. Okay, so I'll extend my crotch depth line on the back as well, following the front. Now I'm going to rule a straight line from the end of the front crotch to meet up to the waistline of the front. This is something I thought of just to add allowance directly to the back, right? And I realized that was about 3 inches, I think, which is too much. So you can use about 2 inches for your allowance instead. Okay, now away from the front crotch, right, I'm going to extend to have a back crotch of 3 inches. You can use 2.5 if you have a medium weight, as in you don't have too much back. Okay, you can use 2.5 inches. Now at the bottom part, I'll add 2 inches, 2 inches, 2 inches, 2 inches. Okay, it's just the crotch that is 3 inches, or maybe 2.5 for you. Okay, so again, I'll use my pant curve to connect them together. I added all my allowance at the inner thigh area for the back. Okay, mostly you can add to both sides of the back. Now I just measured my inner thigh for the front, and I want to make sure that it's the same for the back. So whatever excess I have, I'm just going to come down, right, wherever it ends, I'll mark it. And I'm trying to use I was weird while drafting this trouser. I use my armhole curve while I have a hip curve. Okay, so you can make use of your hip curve to have a perfect curve. Okay, here I've directed the same waistline towards the back, and I'm going to increase the back by 2 inches. In case your back is medium, 1.5 is just fine. Okay, so I'll connect them together like this. When you do this, whenever you sit down, you wouldn't show, right? You will still feel okay. So this is me using the hip curve. I have a hip curve. All right, so that is it. Again, that is it for this tutorial. It's very simple to draft the trouser. So I'm just going to cut the back as well. After drafting the back, then I can move on to cut off this 1 inch that I've taken off from the front crotch. Okay, I'll move on to cut with my material. One important thing I forgot to mention earlier, this is my back piece. Okay, I believe you can see a notch at the top. I allocated the same front green line for the back as well, so I could use it to sew my back dart. Let's move on to sew. Since there will not be any band, this is a bandless trouser, we will need a facing. You might also want to use bias, okay, or make bias out of your material. So I'm pinning my crotch, and I'll sew the crotch together, then I'll move on to pleat. But for the back, I'll make sure I mark my dart. From the notch, I'll come down by 6.5 inches. That is the depth of my trouser. This is not for pocket. Okay, this is not the type of dart that will have a pocket. This is just a normal back dart. So when I get to my machine, I'll use 1/2 inch on both sides of this center dart leg, and I'll sew my dart. I'll repeat the same thing to the second part of the back trouser, or the back trouser piece. So this is also 6.5 inches, and this is my front. Okay, I'm just going to have a pleat, just like you see. I actually showed you that I was making a pleat, but at the end I ended up making it a dart instead. Personally, I didn't really like it, was giving me a puff at the front, so after pleating, I decided to sew it as a dart. Most at times, the front has pleats and not dart. Okay, I've gone ahead to sew my back dart. Okay, since it's going to be a dart, I made sure I sew it before I include my facing, so it is already shaped. So I'm just going to mark around the shape of this back trouser, and I'll just mark the depth of the facing I want. I'm literally trying to mark my facing. Okay, so I folded the fabric into 2 since the back is 2, so 1 for each piece, right? So the depth of my trouser following the waistline is 3 inches. Did I just say trouser? I meant facing. Okay, don't mind me. it's facing. Now I'm using an arrow because I might be confused whether which part will be the top or the down, or which part will be the center back of the trouser or the side. And also, after marking, I decided to also notch it, so I know that this is the top of the trouser and the side of the trouser. This is also the front, and I'm going to repeat the same process as the back, following the shape of the trouser, the side, the waist, and I'll mark the same facing depth as in the 3 inches that I use for the facing. Okay, so this is my front facing. So this is the front and these are the 2 back pieces. I've placed the front piece down and I'm going to place each of the back pieces to the side of the front. I'll pin them together, and so I'm sure you've realized that I haven't stitched the back crotch. That is because I want to fix my zip there. Okay, so I'm going to stitch the side with 1/2 inch, and that is it. I've also stitched the back with a basting stitch so I could unpick it. Okay, so this is what I did after stitching the center front, that's the crotch line. I marked half of my waist, and wherever the waist stops, I directed it to the back crotch. So on the back, from the waist, I marked down wherever I want my zip to stop, right? And this is, I think, 11 inches, and I actually backstitch wherever the zip will stop. Okay, and then I unpick the rest to fix my zip. I unpicked from the top to where the zip will be. Okay, now I'm also ready to join my inner tie, and this is how I've done it. There is also another method of joining the inner tie together with the crotch, which I'll show you in our next trouser tutorial. So here I've cross-checked my tie and I have exactly 1/2 inch allowance to sew, just as I drafted, and I went ahead to join everything together. I also went ahead to fix my zipper to the center back, and this is how it looks like right now. In fact, I was supposed to add an interfacing to the center back before fixing the zipper. I couldn't do it. So now I'm ready to fix my facing, just like I joined the trouser. That is how I joined the facing as well. So I'm just going to pin them together, meeting the seam lines. I'm going to stitch together like this, trim off excess, and also snip through, which we mostly know as notch. Okay, next up, I'll understitch. To neatly finish my facing, I'm going to flip it backwards like this, and I'll stitch following the zipper teeth, just like I stitched the zipper to the center back. This is it. I'll stitch and turn it over like this, and I'll repeat the same thing to the other side of the zip, just to have something like this. You see, I'll also tag the facing to the seam allowance I have, just like this. Okay, there is one important thing I did off cam. After stitching the facing together with the zip, I trimmed off excess so it doesn't become too thick. Okay, I hope you enjoyed watching and learning with me. If yes, you know how we do it. Like, share, subscribe to the channel. If you are new here, please don't make it your last. Stick around, let's learn, experiment, and grow in knowledge together. Thank you all for watching. I'll definitely see you in our next tutorial. Bye bye.